Greetings, traveler.
Hey guys, I'm Shadybunny. I've been playing Battlegrounds for the last 5 years and I've been top 10 on the leaderboards multiple times. And today I want to share with you the 7 things I wish I knew when I first started out. Number 1 is aim for first place every game, but adjust your expectation and your strategy as you go. When I first started out, I had the idea that you were either someone who went for first place or someone who played for top 4. And that might sound a little silly, but I've had multiple people come up to me and ask me that exact same question, so I know it happens to others too. What I mean with this is you should have the ambition to play for first if you're trying to climb in the majority of your games, because if you're going to climb, it means that you're better than the average opponent you're facing, so you're going to get a disproportionate amount of first places. That makes sense. So you do want to put yourself in the position. So you want to pick heroes that have a chance at doing that, although most heroes can. A lot of it is a little bit of a luck as well with what you're going to roll. But heroes like Snake Eyes to get extra economy, heroes like Scenarius, generally speaking, do a lot better at getting first places than someone like Edwin, who just has a lot of armor and a hero power for some tempo. It's just harder to push for first place without a little bit of an economy boost or anything else that like helps you get triples or some sort of, extra value mechanic. So it starts with hero selection. After that, it's putting yourself in a position to play for what is going to win the lobby. So in the current meta, we have something like end of turn Murlocs, which is crazy strong. You have APM Pirates, right? But regardless of what meta you play, you can always check HS Replay. They have a comms tab, and then Jeef, a high-level player, he ranks all the compositions with what's strong. So if you're trying to win the lobby, generally speaking, you're going to try to play one of the top-tier compositions. Now, as you play more in the game and you get more information, I usually say it's going to be around turn 8, the first 10 gold turn 8, turn 9. You're going to have a reasonable idea of what kind of a game you're playing. By that time, you can see, okay, do I have some of the pieces to play these high tier compositions? Do I have a lot of economy built up? Do I still have a lot of health? Do I still have armor? Could I go to tier 6 early? All those things. So you have a lot more information. So generally around that time is when I decide whether I'm still pushing for first place or whether I should settle and try to play for second place. I pretty much never try to play for anything below second place, because almost anything can get second place. You just need to preserve enough health so that you can lose against the person that's going to win. And you need to add extra cards like Leroy or any kind of poison insta-kill mechanic that happens to be in a game at the time. You also just settle for a B tier comp, which is totally fine, because a lot of the time these B tier comps are actually stronger at that moment in the game, but they just have a lower ceiling. That's why they're not very high ranked. So examples of that would be something like Goldrin. Goldrin is a beast comp where you get instant tempo, right? You just add Macaw, Goldrin, and you're big in the fight. But it has difficulty keeping up with these high scaling compositions like the 2 I just mentioned earlier. So that's why it's not really desirable, but you can totally aim for a second place doing that. And if you have the information that this is probably not a game where you're in a good position to push for first, this is where you turn an 8th place into a 2nd by accepting that position, and you play a lower tier comp and you aim for second place. Number 2 is getting good at mid game is 80% of the work when you're trying to get better at the game. This is something that is difficult to conceptualize when you are just starting out, because you might say, oh, well, I got to get good at early game, I got to get good at mid game, I got to get good at late game. But they have a disproportionate return, meaning that you get a lot more value from being good at the mid game than you are from, say, being good at end game. Now, that has a couple of reasons. First of all, you just don't play end game as often as you do mid game. But the other one is also that it's much easier to fix your early and your late game. So what I mean with that is late game, very often, it's just executing the composition that you're already in, which you can learn quite easily by watching streams, watching YouTubers, and see, okay, how do they play their pirates? How do they play their Nagas? Right? And then you just sort of do what they do once you're in that same position. Same thing with like, oh, you have to buy a Leroy and play that. You have to use Mutinous on something to make board space. All these things are easier to copy and replicate. Same thing with the early game. Early game, it's about leveling curves. It's about knowing which minions to buy. It's knowing when to skip a shop and stuff. These things are, again, a bit easier to copy and replicate by seeing someone else do this. Mid game is completely different. Mid game is where you are really tested in your understanding of the game, and essentially the guardrails fall off once you hit mid game. You have your early game where you have your leveling curves and you have like, oh, I should buy this, I should level here, or maybe I roll. But once you're in the mid game, which for me, it's 9 gold, 10 gold. So that's turn 7, turn 8, where that starts. That's where you have a lot of freedom. Generally speaking, the first big decision is, am I going to level to tier 5 or am I going to stay an extra turn on tier 4? And then once you have leveled to 5, it's okay, do I level to 6 now? Do I roll? What am I going to buy? What is good enough? Do I want a little bit more of this? Do I want a little bit more of that? So this is how I got good at mid game. The number one question that really helped me mid game was, okay, what do I need from here in order to get stronger? That can easily be answered by opening up Hearthstone Deck Tracker or the in-game library, checking the tiers and seeing, okay, what is actually available, because that's your first big decision. Am I going to go to tier 5 or do I stay on tier 4? Now, sometimes you are in a bad spot where you've had a rough early game, bad matchups, bad shops, you've taken a lot of damage, we've all been there, and the instinct is, oh, I can't level to 5. I mean, I have to defend myself on tier 4. But then you have to open up the deck tracker and say, okay, which of these cards would I actually buy that are going to make me stronger? And sometimes it's like, oh, there's actually 0 cards here. and those are games where if you are just playing pure on that defensive instinct and it's like, oh, I can't level, I'm losing, I have to roll, or stupid game. That's where you take a bad game and you turn it into a horrible game, right? You may have had 25% chance to stabilize on tier 5, but you had 0 on tier 4. So now you just die. Right, you could just buy some shiny rings or some spells on tier 4, but you're going to fall so far behind that you're probably still going to go 8th. You're just going to go 8th one turn later. So that's not a good strategy. So that was a huge part for me, is to actually ask myself, okay, what needs to happen from here? Staying calm and saying, okay, what do I need? Also, when you're in a good position, right? When you're in a good position, let's say you haven't taken that much damage and you've had good economy, good matchups. Now you ask yourself, okay, what would need to happen for me to not just stabilize, but win the game, right? What do I need? What are the pieces that I need right now? And by answering those questions, you'll be able to navigate your mid game much better. You will know when you see a particular card in the shop whether you need that or not. So an example here would be, if you are losing in the mid game and you need to get stronger, let's say you don't have any innate way on your board to get stronger yet, you might really like something like a monstrosity to get immediately stronger, a Nala, a Moon Eater, or whatever card is in that you can use for instant scaling. Now, the counter example to that would be, let's say you're having a great game and it's the 9 gold turn where you level to tier 5 and then you triple, and it's a 6-drop, and the 6-drop is Lord of Ruins and your board is full of demons. You don't need to get stronger then. You're already strong. You have your Lord of Ruins and you have your tempo. So what you need then is to think, okay, how do I turn this into a first place from here? So specifically for that position, that could be, oh, I want to try and win with Lord of Ruins composition, so I have to roll for Titus and Enforcer and then go to 6 and get the Shtara to resummon the Enforcer. Or it could be, hey, this is like an elemental Murloc pirate lobby, so I'm just going to use this Lord of Ruins for tempo, and then on tier 5 I'm going to try to get Bran and I'm going to get a whole bunch of money and I'm going to transition out of this demon stuff. So super important question for you to ask yourself, okay, what do I need from this position? What would need to happen for me to either stabilize or win the game, depending on what kind of a position you're in? So again, to recap, you're either already stabilized in the Lord of Ruins example, or you haven't yet, which means you need something to get strong. And then the other one is, how do I get more economy? Because a big part of winning games is being ahead of your opponents. And the best way to get ahead of your opponents is by just having more resources than them. So what does this look like? Silavos gives you an extra tavern spell per turn. Mycologist gives you a lot of extra value per turn, especially if you already have a brand. Rogers gives you extra value per turn. So those are essentially the two things you're trying to solve for in that mid game. It's like, how do I get more money so that I get ahead of the other players? And how do I stabilize if my board isn't strong enough? So if I don't already have that Lord of Ruins, or if I don't have some innate scaling already. So let's say you do have the Rogers and you have some spell power because you had a whelp on your board in the early game. Now just playing bounties is going to make you stronger, so you're not desperate for something to stabilize because your board is already stabilizing. But in the other example where you just don't have much yet, you probably do need that monstrosity. You probably do need that Nala for a turn to get stronger. And that takes me straight into point number 3. This is just in my notes, it's just in all caps, economy. So we just talked about how that is important to get ahead of the other players. But when I started out, I did not value economy properly at all. So this is my attempt at helping you guys not make that mistake. When you are in the early game, generally speaking, so this is for pretty much all seasons, pretty much all mechanics, there are slight exceptions, like right now we're in buddy meta where winning fights gives you money, so that is a form of economy, keep that in mind. But most of the time, it's not that important to win your first fight, your third fight, your fourth fight even, because you can only take maximum of 5 damage on those rounds. So what is far more important is getting money. So we want to get Alley Cat, we want to get River Skipper, we want to get Salamental, we want to use something like a Chef's Choice on turn 3 to save an extra gold, because now we don't have to sell our starter unit, we have 3 units instead of 2 units. That matters so much, and that is because that extra gold can then be exchanged for far better ways to stabilize later on tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. If you have extra gold, that gold is far more valuable later in the game than that little bit of extra tempo you gained on, turn 1, turn 3, turn 4. So this really clicked for me when I was studying early game and I just saw, I believe it was Beater Babbitt, so shout out to Beater, awesome player. I saw him just take money over everything, game after game after game, right? It was TAD, it was Shell Collector, Salamental, it didn't matter. As long as it was money, he would buy it. And I'm not saying that he would always do that, I don't want to misrepresent Beater, but it's a huge part of the early game. So value economy over pretty much anything else, because it's going to give you more resources to stabilize on tier 4, on tier 5. And then obviously that ties into what we already talked about. You want to upgrade your economy as you go. So in the beginning, it's, oh, you buy the Shell Collector and get an extra gold. Cool, I guess, right? But then on tier 3, you get something like, ooh, Lost City Looter. Now I get a bounty at the end of every turn. That's free resources. You get to tier 4 or tier 3 as Snake Tongue right now. With a rally, I get a coin. Good stuff. Tier 4, I get Bigwig. Tier 5, I have Bran. Now all my battle cries are ×2. Tier 6, I have Mycologist. I have Silvas. So the economy just keeps getting better. And you want to continuously take care of your economy. You want to nurture that economy. You want to make sure you have more resources to work with than your opponents, because then you can build better boards than them. And that sounds so obvious when I say that, but when you're in the game, it can be really foggy. Like, is this worth it? Is this not worth it, right? So keep that in mind, that you really want to build that economy and then use that economy to stabilize with examples that we've already given. If you have extra money, you can use a bit more to buy odd cards for Moon Eater. Like if you have Bran, you're automatically cycling a lot of odd cards anyway. You get some spells for your Nala, or you can buy that monstrosity. So these are all things that just work really well together. If you have more money, you're going to be able to buy more cards to stabilize with, which is going to preserve your health, which is going to put you in a position to get even more economy, which is going to make you even stronger. And now you're not losing again, and so on and so on. And this is how top level players just snowball the game out of control. They get a little bit of an advantage and they build on that and they build on that and they build on that until it's such a massive snowball that the boards are just not, you can't compare them anymore. The board of the pro player is just several times stronger than the person that didn't build their economy. Hey everyone. If you like this type of educational video, but you want more weekly specific meta advice, check out the join button below the video, click the elite membership, and now back to the video. And then point number 4 is tempo only matters if you need it. Now, that sounds a little weird and maybe like, of course, yeah, sure, I'll take tempo when I need it. What I mean with that is that there is a real cost attached to being too strong. Now, I already want to lay out an exception where sometimes you're just automatically strong and you are still power leveling, and that is great. Enjoy your free win. Bob has blessed you. You know, you have like a Yogg and the spell is amazing every turn, and we've all been there at some point. Those games I'm not talking about. I'm talking about normal games where you have to choose, do I get stronger or do I level or do I, you know, work more on my economy? The main goal, especially in the mid game when, you know, damage cap is 10 damage or 15 damage, taking 10 or 15 damage, you can't do that very often. So we really do want to avoid that. So purposely speaking, we don't want to take damage, but we want to barely not take damage, and we want to invest the rest of the resources into leveling, into economy. Because if you mismanage your resources and you dump all your resources into winning your turn 5 and turn 6 fight, by the time turn 7 and turn 8 roll around, the people that didn't mismanage their resources, so for instance, they leveled instead of staying an extra turn, they bought some economy cards and some tempo cards instead of just pure tempo, or even just like buying spells to get stronger immediately and not really, you know, putting more minions on the board. That's the point where their boards are going to outperform your board because they have additional resources to work with. So they're buying 4 drops, they're buying 5 drops, and you've only just leveled to tier 4, you didn't buy anything that turn. That's really where that catches up with you. So whenever you're in the game, try to ask yourself, am I being too strong right now? Am I under leveling? Especially if you have a good start, even if the shop is nice, you should prioritize leveling, because if you are already winning the fight, investing more resources into making your board stronger by not leveling is incorrect. You want to level with your strength, because that's all that strength is there to do, right? The strength on your board at that stage of the game is only there to allow you to level, because you're going to swap that whole board out for new cards, for higher tier cards later anyway. So investing more into it and building it to be even stronger for that point of the game makes no sense. It's going to catch up with you later. So always ask yourself, am I strong enough right now? If so, I should ignore these, you know, good cards in the shop, and I should level. Now, keep in mind that you do want to win those fights whenever possible. So you do want to make a strong board, but this is something that I've seen with many of my students when I'm coaching them. Let's say a good example is they have that Lord of Ruins board, and then they have an opportunity, there's like a brand in the shop, and they triple into Mycologist. They could technically take another Lord of Ruins and say, oh, I'm just going to do that. And that's fine, right? You could do that, but you now are being handed an opportunity to play like an even higher tier comp. You have brand, you have Mycologist, you will be offered money, and you're already winning your fights anyway with, you know, let's say the one side of the board is your demons and stuff, and the other side is your brand and your Mycologist. In a hypothetical scenario where you know your demons are going to win already, and you can just build a board behind that, that is a much better idea than to say, oh, let me take more tempo. Like maybe a better example would be like Party Guest, right? Because like Lord of Ruins, you could still argue, well, that's a good comp, you could just build that. But like Party Guest, that would just be pure tempo, where I have the brand, I play the Party Guest, I get some jugs, cool, that's some tempo right now. But the Mycologist would then give me more money to work with. And by getting stronger right now, when I would already win the fight, I am overshooting the bar. So if we want to visualize that, maybe this is the bar that you need to clear in order to win the fight. You don't want to be here if you're costing yourself opportunities to get more economy, right? You want to be here or here, right? That's perfect. And then the rest of your resources should be dedicated into building your future board. And if you do that well, if you have that delicate balance right of investing resources for the fights right now and investing resources in future fights, because that's essentially what we're doing with economy, you're going to win way more games. And point number 5. The goal is to build a strong board, not a composition. And that's, again, right, these are all things that I grabbed from my own experience when I was climbing. So this is something that I had to come to terms with. When I was learning the game, I think like many players, you have a checklist. You have a shopping list of like, oh, I'm going to play beasts, so I need this, and this, and that. Or I'm going to play demons, so I need this, and that. And that's essentially what you're doing. You just already locked into, oh, I'm going to play this comp, I'm going to buy those cards. But the goal is to win fights and build a strong board. So sometimes you already have something on your board that you can work with, and it doesn't really make sense to push or like a whole composition. So this is when we are in a position where we talked about that earlier, where you want to go for a first place, but the game hasn't really worked out. And it doesn't really make sense from that position to then say, oh, well, I now need to build a comp. Very often you already have something on your board that's strong. So let's say in the mid game, you had to play a Myrmidon and you played a couple spells on that Myrmidon and you have a big unit. Very often you could just make that board stronger without being a comp, right? Without being a real composition. So what I mean with that is you can just have a big Myrmidon and have maybe like one meditative to give you more spell power, and then one more Naga to add some spells, like a Sylvos on your Myrmidon. And then the rest of your board could be Thrasher for Venom, Bramblewitch, Leroy, right? That's totally fine. There's nothing that forces you to play a real comp. So once I understood this, I had a lot of these mishmash boards either get top 3, top 2, or sometimes even winning, because I just understood that the goal of a composition of a strategy is to build a strong board. So if I have the opportunity to assemble a strong board, I shouldn't throw that away and say, get out of my way, strong board. I'm trying to get a strategy so that I can make a strong board. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I should just work with the board that I have here, the opportunity in front of me. Now, there is a reason why these top tier strategies are top tier. If you have the opportunity to play APM Pirates or End of Turn Murlocs or even the Lord of Ruins composition that I talked about earlier, then do that, because that's going to be stronger generally speaking. But this is for all those games where you're not really in a position to push for that. Just start looking at your board slots and saying, okay, how does this win fights? And thinking about the game like that really changed how I approach those positions, where I just started thinking, okay, well, this is strong, so this is probably staying. Okay, what do I need? Oh, what's in the game? Well, Bramblewitch is in. Okay, well, I could technically just add Bramblewitch and Leroy to this board, and I have this one big Myrmidon, and that's kind of good to go. So keep that in mind. When you're in those positions, ask yourself, okay, how do I make this into a strong board? And the answer isn't always, oh, I should build a proper composition. Sometimes it's, I just have a mishmash of 2 units that are good. Like another example is you're playing Curator or your Tess and you stole the Curator minion and you can reborn that. That's a reborn Venom. It's good in fights. That's going to kill 2 things, right? Assuming that there's no shields or tokens and stuff, which can happen. But don't be like, oh, well, I have to sell this because this isn't on my checklist of perfect APM pirate board. And then get out of the board, you reborn Venom minion. No, keep that. That's going to kill 2 things. That's great. Keep that. Then from that position, just add stuff and look at your board and say, okay, how do I make this stronger? How do I just make these slots on the board valuable and do stuff? And you would be amazed at the kind of, real boards that you beat with that kind of a mishmash. All right, and that brings us to point number 6. Leveling curves are just guidelines. That's a big one. When I started out, because that's how I learned, I was very rigid and very structured. Okay, we're gonna do this leveling curve, which cost me a lot of MMR, no doubt, but obviously I had to learn. The mantra here is something that Jeef, right, which is another very high-level player, definitely go check him out. He has this mantra, don't buy trash, which very simply put means don't spend your gold on bad units. Now, that means that a leveling curve can be wrong for your particular situation. So the most popular leveling curve is the standard curve, where, you level on turn 2 and then again on turn 5, turn 6, right? So that gives you 2 turns on tier 2, and then you level pretty much straight to tier 4 after you've leveled to tier 3. That curve can be really good, but only if you find things you actually want to spend your gold on tier 2. So turn 3 is a pretty big example, because either you're going to find something that works, which would be something like Chef's Choice, or I get Shell Collector, coin, and I can buy another good card, or you're going to find something that doesn't really work. Now, again, for the very moment, right, when I'm recording this video, we're in buddy meta. So winning fights is important. So it is quite often that we don't want to go tier 3 on turn 3. But in most other metas, when you are presented with a bad shop on turn 3, the standard response to that is to go to tier 3 and say, okay, this is a bad shop. I don't want to spend my money on that. I'm going to go to tier 3. So even though you had a certain curve in mind, you can then deviate from that. And then you can deviate again from it the turn after, where you might double buy, or if you have an extra gold, you might even go tier 4 on turn 4 because the shop is bad again. And the reverse is also true. If you had it in your mind that you were gonna level, but the shop is really good, it's oftentimes okay to stay an extra turn. So let me give you an example there, because we also talked about not overbuying tempo, and this can be a little conflicting. Sometimes, let's say you follow the standard curve, and it's the 8 gold turn that is the normal turn to then go to tier 4 on the standard curve. And then on 9 gold, you can either go to tier 5 or buy some stuff on 4. So in certain positions, you're going to get a tier 3 shop that's so good that it just doesn't make sense to go to tier 4. So we're talking about a shop with double Lost City Looter, and you have like a chef's choice to make it a perfect 8 gold, and you can still fit 3 units on your board. Like, no doubt about it, like, just buy that, that's great. Or, you know, there can be shops where you have like a shop buff, like the staff, and then there's 2 of those trickster demons that eat the shop. Again, that's perfect, right? You're like buffing them, you're playing them, they're eating the shop. So the point of a leveling curve is to make you spend your gold efficiently. So again, here, most of the time, the curve is going to be correct, because we follow these curves for a reason. It's because they have, you know, a good chance of giving you a good outcome. So again, for newer players, following the standard curve over and over and over is totally fine, right? But if you want to take it to the next level, if you want to improve, you're going to have to deviate from that when you see a shop where it just doesn't make sense to follow that curve. You say, oh, this shop is kind of bad, I should level. Or, well, I was going to level, but this shop is amazing, and I get a lot of economy from it, and I get stronger, so okay, let me buy that. Because the outcome of that, let me go back to that specific example. The outcome of you buying on turn 6, which is the 8 gold turn, instead of leveling, is now you win that fight instead of losing it, and you're getting additional economy, or you're just really strong, which means you can level the turn after you go to tier 4 and you buy another card, or you might even hold an economy card, or you might use something like overconfidence, and then you can just level to tier 5 and you're healthy and you're strong and everything is good. Whereas if you had the idea, oh, well, I can't level here because I have to go to tier 4 because that's what my curve says, you lose that fight. You didn't get good cards, you now have to stay on tier 4, you might not really roll very good cards on tier 4, and after that tier 4 turn is over, your board is now weaker than what it would have been if you had bought on tier 3. So keep that in mind. When you see good stuff in the shop, especially around that tier 3 8 gold turn, it's okay to buy. And the more common example is when you see bad stuff, that's where you're supposed to level, or especially on tier 4, you might have to do a roll. Sometimes even on tier 2, you do a roll, or that's uncommon, right? But sometimes we have something like careful investment in the shop, and it's say the 5 gold turn. You just buy the investment, you roll, and then you play a different tier 2 unit. You pop the investment, and then the turn after that, you can level and buy a card. And suddenly everything works, instead of saying, oh, well, I'm going to sell my unit that I don't really want to sell, and I'm going to go to 3, or I'm going to buy 2 bad cards from the shop. So in some rare cases, the answer is roll, right? And get something better. But just try to use your own logic in that moment and say, okay, am I using my gold efficiently here? Because that in the end is the purpose of the curve, is for me to use my gold efficiently. And if I'm not doing that, then it's better to deviate from the curve. All right, and then number 7, it's that higher MMR players are just people like you and me. I definitely struggled with this when I was coming up, when I was getting higher ranks. I was like, oh, I have to play different now because these guys are just going to build insane boards and I have to go full defense. And it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy where you played different, you played more defensive, you don't have as many resources now, so your board is weaker than their board and they're better. And you're like, I knew it, right? I'm getting wrecked. So play normal. That's really it. Again, might seem like silly advice, but I'm making this video for me 5 years ago, right? So me 5 years ago, if you hear this, they're just people, play normal, build your economy, have a good board. Again, it's maybe more easier said than done, but don't be intimidated, right? There's no reason to be intimidated. These are just people. They make mistakes, they position wrong, they order wrong, they're not immune to that. They do it less, but they still do it. So if you find yourself climbing and getting some ladder anxiety, getting some rank anxiety, remind yourself, these are just people like you and me. They're going to make mistakes. If I make a mistake, that's not the end of the world. I haven't immediately lost. It's very unlikely that my 7 opponents are all playing perfectly at that very exact moment in the game. Someone in the lobby at that point is saying, oh my God, no, I should have done this, or why did I do this, right? They're all just navigating their own game. So stick to your game plan, play with confidence, and like it's gonna be okay. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. I sure enjoyed making it, so please let me know if you want more of these types of videos below. And if the video was good to you, please like and subscribe. That'd be great. Thank you.